Welcome to the Troy City Council meeting on February 1st, 2010. We ask that if you have a cell phone, electronic device, that you turn it off completely, not even on vibrate because it affects our sound system, please. Thank you. This evening, we are pleased to welcome for our invocation Pastor Hal Wimhoff from the First United Methodist Church, who will give us our invocation, and that will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. Pastor.
Mayor, members of the council, and citizens, I invite you to pray with me. Dear God, we give thanks for our city of Troy and for the privileged roles that we play in its well-being, both as citizens and as a council. Guide us tonight as we work together for its well-being. Guard our lips from inflammatory rhetoric that produces heat but little light. Guard us from self-centeredness and narrow thinking in the pursuit of our narrow interest. Help us all to see the big picture of our common core values, mission, and vision for this city that we all call home. May we show care for this city and all her citizens. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor. Nice to see you. May we have the roll call, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Mayor Schoen?
Here.
Councilor Beltramini? Present. Fleming?
Here.
Holler?
Here.
Irwin? Here. McGinnis?
Here.
Slater?
Here.
Quorum present. This evening, we begin with a very special presentation on a day that has started with most excitement here in the city of Troy. And so as I go down to the front microphone, I'm going to ask Dr. Barbara Fowler and President of the School Board, Wendy Underwood, if they would both come up, and I'll meet them down at the front. Okay, that's good. Now, this is a proclamation in recognition of NASA Month in Troy, February 2010. For those of you that don't know, this morning at exactly 10 o'clock, 10:10, there was a downlink with the space station where the students in Troy, whether they were in the auditorium at Athens or whether they were in their classrooms around the district, were linked up with the astronauts, and the astronauts answered questions that were composed and written by students, and the students asked their questions of the astronauts, and there was that time delay in between. And it was wonderful. The program began with the national anthem and Space Odyssey 2000, which gives you goosebumps just to start with, and that was wonderful. Everything went off like you would think that NASA planned the Troy School District activity, but it really was this Troy School District that pulled off all this timing. And the really cool team that decided to do this and to enter to be one of 6 school districts in the nation, the only school district in Michigan to be chosen for this. And then in a couple of months, NASA is going to do one of the science experiments that the students submitted, and one of their experiments on microgravity. So it was quite a day. And I know that both Dr. Fowler and Wendy Underwood would like to say a few things too, so I don't want to cover everything. But anyway, here's the proclamation. Whereas the Troy community is privileged to be part of an out-of-this-world educational opportunity with astronauts aboard the orbiting space station expedition, and whereas the International Space Station, ISS, is an orbiting research facility supported by 19 nations that conducts experiments in the area of biology, human biology, physics, astronomy, and meteorology. And whereas Troy is the only Michigan community and one of only 6 in the nation to be selected for this honor by the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and whereas the Troy School District will host a downlink that will allow the space station crew to speak live to our Troy students, and whereas this unique opportunity will give students important insight into the importance of NASA, and whereas this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity creates a unique learning experience for our students to engage in activities that will create excitement for science and space travel, and whereas the downlink is scheduled for 10 a.m. on February 1st at Athens High School, now therefore let it be resolved that the City of Troy celebrates this important event by officially declaring February 2010 to be NASA Month in the City of Troy. Be it further resolved that the Troy City Council congratulates the Troy School District for being chosen with the prestigious honor of hosting the downlink with members of the orbiting space station Expedition 22, presented this first day of February 2010, signed by myself and all members of council. And council members were all invited and appeared this morning, and I'll tell you, it was absolutely breathtaking and so exciting. And so it is with great honor we present this to you. And would you like to say a few words to the community?
Well, thank you, Mayor Schilling. It was a wonderful day, and it went off without a hitch. I will give a little plug to Comcast because they did donate the dish that we used in order to make this link with the International Space Station. We had students from all 3 levels, elementary, middle school, and high school, involved with this. Jennifer Gottlieb, who is our science math coordinator, is the one that gets the credit for initiating the application and involving our staff. They worked very hard this summer, and ever since the application went in and they were told that they were going to be able to have this opportunity, working out experiments with the students, working out opportunities. We had over 300 people that volunteered working with the students, people from Michigan State University, Wayne State University. The students worked this afternoon, this morning, on experiments where the older students actually did the experiments and worked with the younger students. So it's really been a wonderful opportunity for all of our students to see the value of science and math education. The astronauts did a fabulous job with the questions. What I found very interesting is that the questions the students developed actually had to be given to NASA and had to be approved by NASA and then sent back to us. So it wasn't just off the cuff. Many students posed questions hoping to be selected, and 20 were selected, and those 20 students spoke directly with the astronauts in the space station. And the fact that it was live was just very, very exciting. So I do want to thank the City Council for recognizing us and for all the support that we have regularly from the City of Troy and from the Troy City Council. Thank you very much.
This evening, there are no carryover items or public hearings, and so we'll go directly to public comment. And seeing that there are more than 15 people who wish to speak, I move to suspend the rules. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved by the chair, seconded by Councilwoman Kerwin, that we suspend the rules. The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew, to suspend, and then we'll give the time, or do you want us to do it all in one?
Just would like to
Councilwoman Kerwin.
Thank you. That is
Okay.
correct. Mayor Schilling,
Yes?
Councilmember Beltramini. Yes. Fleming,
Yes.
Howrlack,
No.
Kerwin. Yes. McGinnis,
Yes.
Slater,
Yes.
Motion passes, and I move that we give the time limit of 3 minutes per speaker due to the number. Moved by the chair, seconded by Councilwoman Beltramini, that we allow 3 minutes per speaker. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Beltramini. Yes. Fleming,
Yes.
Howrlack,
No.
Kerwin. Yes. McGinnis,
Yes.
Slater,
Yes.
Mayor Schilling.
Yes. Motion passes. And folks, just as a reminder, this is on items that are on the agenda, that are postponed regular business or consent agenda items, or items that are not on the agenda. This encompasses all of the items. So I will go to the list here and ask that folks line up. I'll call 5 names, have them line up. It seems to move along quickly when we do it that way. So the first 5 names are Marvin Reinhardt, Richard Peters, Gordon Shepke, Jack Witt, Janice Daniels. So would those folks line up in that order? I don't see Mr. Reinhardt here, Mr. Peters, so we'll start with you. And Vera Mills, then would be the 5th person. Okay, Mr. Peters, do you want to start?
Evening, folks. I'll try not to be too long.
Remember, when you come up to speak, give us your name.
Yeah, I'm Richard Peters. I live about a mile away from here. I just want to give a little set too on energy for a couple, maybe next couple sessions, then I can be declared mad and off to the woods or something. But I think what we want to do is, even though the economy may be recovering, is I think we want sustainable growth, and we want it that's recoverable. And I have 2 authors here, and one is David Bloom, and his book is Alcohol Can Be a Gas. Well, he talks about his expertise is he's a permaculturalist, and he talks about rotation of crops, crop yields, and soil improvement, plus how we can convert our economy. I realize this isn't, you can take, and that there may be etc. stuff like that. This other author, and you're talking about NASA, he may be the inventor of NASA. His name is Roy McAllister. He's the head of the American Hydrogen Association. And he suggests that, the future is in carbon and carbon fiber. He also talks about how oil brine is polluting our water supplies in the aquifers, or possibly, I know we have dead zones in our oceans and stuff like that, and I don't know if that's it, but I would urge people. And also he suggests that we can clean our atmosphere up by sending rockets of halogen or salts up into the stratosphere. So I'm not saying that we should do this, but I just want to suggest that these are 2 books that folks could buy or look at in order to just get some ideas for how we deal with our thing. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Next speaker, Mr. Shepke.
Mayor, Council, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. I appreciated the minister's comments tonight when he talked about the big picture and core values. To me, the big picture is freedom of speech. And the core value in Troy should be the accountability of this administration and this council to the voters of the city. And ultimately, that will happen. There's one thing before I get into talking about this special election coming up. I would like to especially protest the way the appeals board meets on city assessments. I think that should be an open meeting. I've sure felt like it wasn't fair, at least in my case when I went in there. And many times the comparables, they just they just weren't properly assessed. And I think that the only way we can keep everything on the up and up is to have the things open, because all of our, as far as I know, all of our other meetings are. My next point is I would like to see the DDA, the Downtown Development Authority, defunded, because it's been very fiscally irresponsible in the past, and their rate of spending is unsustainable because they will bend over backwards not to turn a dime back over to the city budget, in my opinion. I think we absolutely need to shut down Sanctuary Lake, sell it, privatize it, do whatever. It's been a proven loser, even in good times, and I think we need to clear our books of that debacle over there. The next gripe I've got is with our manager. When and I'm not trying to get personal, but it's just the idea that I didn't, when he was up to be brought back to the city of Troy, I didn't trust his vision of fiscal responsibility before when he was in Troy, and it bothered me to bring him back, because there's so many of us that had to go out and try to, with this administration and other administrations, some of the things that the chamber came up with and were sanctioned by the administrations under his watch were just, they just took so many hundreds of man hours and so much money to bring us back to reality. So I just don't, this is a personal opinion, I just don't trust his vision of fiscal responsibility. That's just me. And this is an operating increase of 29% increase.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it?
Yes. Mrs. Plata, the buzzer isn't ringing, but the clock went down, yes. Jack Witt?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Following public comment at the meeting last week, a couple of things were stated which I guess I'm still a little confused about. I believe it was you, Madam Mayor, who, following public comment, specifically addressed, as a member of council, the issue of the increase, and looked over, I believe, to the city manager and said, "Now I want to discuss this. Now this is really a decrease, isn't it?" As I remember, that's what was said. And sometime later in the proceedings, I think it was Mr. Lamarada confirmed that in fact it's what is contemplated here is a $38 million increase. Now, I brought a calculator today just in case some of these points aren't clear, but I don't think I need to use it for this one. It seems to me that if $38 million is going to be gained through this tax initiative, it's certainly not a decrease. Now, later in the proceedings last week, I think it was the assessor who suggested that this was a 3% increase. Again, I'll do the calculations if you like. I'll go through them, but as I understand, this is an adjustment, i.e. an increase to the city general millage rate, which is 6.5. Incidentally, this is a city general millage rate. I see some other things listed here: school supplemental, school debt. It's very important to understand, I think, and in fact, that we have the superintendent here, it's really important to understand none of this increase will be applied to the schools. And in fact, one could argue that to the extent the city is outrageous in its spending, there's less money available for the schools. But anyway, let me get back to the point. I've gone through this calculation before. It's pretty straightforward. Again, I could do it, but I think anybody who has a calculator could do it. And it seems to me a 1.9 increase on 6.5, you simply divide the 1.9 by 6.5, and presto, you got 0.29. And let's use an exact example, since apparently some people don't appreciate that. If this is passed, they will pay 29% more in terms of the city general taxes than they otherwise would pay. So, well, let's take a house that, for purposes of taxes, state equalized value is $150,000. There's no change That tax at that house at 6.5, it has a 975. An increase of 1.9 would take the city general millage rate to 8.4. 8.4 times 150 is 1,260. Now that increase is 285. To get the percentage increase, again, it's simple, straightforward math as far as I know. 285 divided by 975 equals 0.29, same number. So again, I don't quite understand, what's happened in the past isn't relevant. Any individual who has to face this increase in taxes will pay 29% more than they otherwise would pay going forward. It seems to me that's the relevant point.
Our next speaker is Janice Daniels.
I used as an example in the forum presentation the other evening the impact that the tax increase would have on one local business, the Troy Sports Center, being as that business is near and dear to my heart. And I would have thought that the owner would be concerned, if not devastated, by a $20,000 a year increase in his property taxes on only one of the many Troy properties that he owns. So I thought he would thank me for mentioning his facility. But then I see in the most recent edition of the Troy Times a letter published from Dennis Bostic, the owner of the Troy Sports Center, where he belittles me. He states that he supports the millage increase, and he assures us that he would not pass the cost increase on to his customers, even though, I might add, he raised the cost of drop-in hockey by 100% recently. Then in that very same edition of that very same paper, there was a front-page article that said that the state gave 2 Troy companies a tax break. If you read into the article, you will see that the Troy City Council approved a plant rehabilitation tax exemption for Dennis Bostic, who is also the owner of the Wagoner building on Rochester Road. That exemption will freeze the existing taxable value for his building for up to 12 years. So it looks like the city cut a deal with Mr. Bostic, and now in return, he supports the millage increase. And why would there have to be a tax freeze at all if all of our property values are going to go down anyway? The truth is, the loss of revenue to the city from this tax exemption is going to have to be made up on the backs of other taxpayers, you and me. And that only begs the question, are all those overkill yes signs at the corner of John R. and Big Beaver Road some sort of quid pro quo? And now the city's conducting a high-energy marketing campaign to make it look like it's we the people who are hiding something or deceiving someone. But remember, you're the ones with the machine. You have the taxpayers' money and the strings of clout to create this huge marketing campaign against us. I also looked at the property values of the citizens who spoke before the council in support of this tax hike last week. 8 of the 11 people who spoke in favor of a millage hike have taxable values that are less than their state equalized values, and so their own taxes have continued to go up even though their property values have gone down. And yet all of those people stood there assuring us that even though our millage was going up, our taxes would be going down. Not for them, it seems. That being said, I would like to suggest that anyone who wants to give the city more of their own money can simply march right down to City Hall tomorrow morning, stand in line with all the other people who want their property taxes increased with their checkbooks in hand, and you just write a check out to the City of Troy for any amount that you want. But please don't raise everybody else's taxes until we can get to the bottom of some of these other options that the city has at their disposal. We've always had the money to offer our city so that they could continue operations unchecked by the people. I think that 2010 is the year that we need to hold our elected officials' feet to the fire and see if they really are worth their salt in an economic crisis. I'm voting no.
And please, folks, I forgot to announce that. We're asking you not to clap. It uses up time for the speakers. Before Vera Mills starts, would these people line up behind her? Jerry Sable, Harry Philo, James Kinsler, Paul Beck, and William Wansik. Please, in that order, the next 5. Yes. Vera Mills? Thank you.
I guess I'm one of these crazy taxpayers, though, that really feels I don't want my taxes to drop. I want the services that the city's been providing me. Much as I'd like to save some money, believe me, the more I study this issue, the more I realize how important a yes vote is going to be. I looked at my 2009 tax bill. it's almost around $4,000. However, only $910 goes to the city of Troy. Even if if this 29% materializes, then to me that would be $1,200. That isn't even $100 a month. Right now, it's less than $25 a week. I receive a lot of services. I commend the city staff for what they've done. And it does bother me that there are fees and different things that are already being put on because we can't afford to maintain the services that we've had in this city. I want services like police service above 911. I want presence in the neighborhood. If there's vandalism, I'd like a police car out there looking for the kids that are tearing down mailboxes. I'd like solid fire protection. I want prompt snow removal. It's really nice to be able to get out of my driveway and go somewhere. I want my trash picked up once a week. I want decent roads. I want sidewalks. These are all things I've had here in Troy. I want to be able to get a current book at the library. I want to be able to walk through the Nature Center, take a step back into history at the Troy Museum. I even like my community center to stay open and not have to pay, like right now, a $10 fee to go over and quilt. I know if this millage doesn't go through, it's going to mean more fees next year. That's only the tip of the services that have been provided for me in the last 35 years that I've lived here in Troy, and I'm grateful. And I'm probably more upset than many people because I came from Southwest Detroit. I grew up there. I loved living there. I thought I'd lived there my whole life. By the time I left, I couldn't go to a library locally and get a current book. Snow removal, there were many times my car barely got down to the main streets, let alone into my residential street, and I had to walk to get home. I like, as I say, the snow removal that we have. I'm grateful for all these things. Believe me, I hope that Troy isn't going to be going down the same path that I saw in my lifetime in Detroit. I want to encourage people to really look at their own taxes and consider a yes vote on February 23rd. And second, I really want the council to look at this money, if it becomes available, and spend it on these services. As a senior here, it's very helpful for me to have all these things provided for me. Thank you.
Yes, is this Jerry? Jerry Sabell? Yes.
Council members, Mayor. Thank you for letting me have this opportunity to speak. Not quite as eloquent or learned as the previous speakers, but I only wanted to voice my opinion here that if you're going to live in a city that has a lot of amenities to it, you're going to have to pay for it. And that's where we're at right now. But I'm not here to debate that or question that. What I'm here to bring attention to is the allocation of whatever is approved to the services that are available right now. Namely, what I'm concerned about is the library and the Parks and Recreation and public services that our youth, our children, really take part in. These services are sometimes immeasurable and unseen, such as the corridor and Rochester Road improvements here. Everybody sees that, but you don't see what the other services provide for our children. So whichever way the vote goes as far as the millage, I hope that the council takes particular attention to continuing the appropriations to special services and special people in those services. And particularly I want to bring attention to Boys and Girls Club over on John R. that provide immeasurable services to some of the families, several of the families, that have children who have special needs and have nowhere else to go after school for that social interaction that they really can't get in school. And that's all I have to say. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jerry. The next speaker is Harry Philo.
Yes, my name is Harry Philo, and question has been asked, what kind of city do you want to live in? And my answer is a safe city. I want to keep a well-maintained police force and firefighters and keep the streets safe in all kinds of weather. I have had an occasion to see what the police do in an emergency, and I want to preserve their high level of service. We need to keep the fire and police response time short. Every day I learn something more about my city, even though I've lived here for a number of years. I use the city services that improve my quality of life, like the library and community center. Being a citizen of Troy and having access to these city services is very valuable. It is time to invest in these services. It is all a part of keeping Troy safe and a great place to live and work, and I urge a yes vote on the ballot for the February 23rd election. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Paul Beck.
Mayor, Council, in case someone forgot, that all the salaried employees for the city of Troy got a 2.5% wage increase last year. And first year cost us $174,000. 5 years from that point, it's going to cost us $870,000. And 10 years from that point, it's going to cost us $1.7 million. And I can understand why they want to raise our assessments and our values and our millage, because they need to pay for salaries. I think we can do away with a lot of the salaries around here, and I strongly suggest that we vote no on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Before the next speaker, I'm going to call the next 5 names. Is this Mr. Kinsler?
Right here.
Oh, okay. What is your name, sir? This gentleman right here. Yes.
Okay.
Who? No, I need to know your name. Sir, what is your name?
My name's Bill Wansick, William Wansick.
Yes, okay. I speak
And,
to you somehow. Okay.
Not to
you were
sound
sitting
redundant,
down.
but I also read the Troy Times, and a lot of what I say is kind of stealing the thunder of the previous speaker, but I do have something to add to it. Part of the Troy Citizens United presentation says focused on the impact of the proposed tax increase would have on one local business, the Troy Sports Center. In a letter published in this latest issue, the January 28th edition of Troy Times, Dennis Bostic, owner of the Troy Sports Center, stated that he supports the millage increase, and if it is approved, he would not be passing any of those costs on to his customers. However, in that same paper, there's a front page article titled, "The State Gives 2 Troy Companies a Tax Break." It stated in the article that the Troy City Council approved a 6-year, $23,152 tax break for Axeltex Company, located in the Wagner Building on Rochester Road, plus a plant rehabilitation exemption for the building owner, the same Dennis Bostic. The exemption would freeze the existing tax value of that building for up to 12 years. Evidently, Mr. Bostic supports the millage increase for one of his buildings after receiving tax relief from the city on another of his properties. Furthermore, another company named Luminaries is mentioned as seeking similar exemptions. I wonder how many such tax breaks and freezes the city grants on a regular basis. According to the article, Axeltech could add 50 new jobs with the expansion, which would definitely be beneficial to our current economic times. However, this form of selective corporate welfare does result in a loss of revenue to the city that will have to be made up by other taxpayers like you and me. I guess the logical question for anybody that's before they go into the ballot box is to find out how many of these exemptions exist right now. What's the total dollar value of tax exemptions and deals that have been cut with corporate citizens, and what's the dollar impact, and how much of that is rolled into this, is going to have to be rolled into this tax increase that the rest of us are going to have to pay. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Before the next speaker, you can come up, sir, but I'm going to call the next 5 people. Don Barnes, come on, Kathy Fusinari, Bill Briggs, Sworn Raphill, and Ward Randall, those 5. Good evening. And you are?
James Kinsler.
Right.
My name is James Kinsler, one of address this Troy City Council, but also everybody in this room. I started a business to make fuel injection equipment for race cars in 1967. I built a building on Thunderbird Street in 1973. The business did very well. It grew over the years to 27 employees in 2006 with good wages and benefits. We shipped to every state in the country. We shipped 20% overseas. I think we were a nice asset for the state and the country. Then the economic downturn hit us hard in 2007. By March of 2008, our sales had dropped over 30%. I'm in touch with a lot of very smart, hardworking business owners all over the country. They have similar stories. This is not unusual. 30% is not real unusual. If you go out and you talk to the businessmen in the area, you go into the restaurants, and into the clothes stores. I mean, it's a severe downturn. It made me sick, frankly. But I took my workers one by one into my office and I cut their salaries 20% and cut all their overtime. They've made a lot of money on overtime over the years. Our Blue Cross Medical went from a totally no cost to the workers to a large copay. They're paying about $4,000 a year per family. We stopped funding the workers' tax-deferred retirement plan that we used to put 5% of the amount of their W-2 wages into. This was more than a 30% total cut in their compensation package. And this kind of stuff's going on all over the country. Some are better, some are worse. Drive up Thunderbird Street, drive up many streets. Those buildings that are closed, that's a 100% wage cut. And I know a lot of those people haven't gotten new jobs. I've been on Thunderbird since 1973. I knew a lot of these business owners. I knew a lot of the workers. They're in deep trouble. Then we let 3 workers go after all that, and we're still not breaking even. As we know, the City of Troy is requesting a property millage increase to replace some of the further tax revenue they'll lose due to the falling property taxes. I urge all the Troy citizens to vote against this. The City of Troy needs to make do like these businesses and citizens are. Troy needs to take a 15% compensation package cut, which would about bring them in the line with what most of their businesses and citizens are enduring. The cut I propose would be distasteful, truly would. I mean, I'm sure when I say 15% to any of you, you're like, well, come on, behind closed doors, we were talking at 10% at times, and people were sick about that. Well, we took twice that amount. That's what's realistic. When times were fabulous in Troy, come on, you got your tennis courts, the golf courses, and on and on and on. Time to cut.
Thank you. Don Barnes is the next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Don Barnes. There is a quote from the 19th century credited to Josh Billings that I believe applies to the millage proposal debate we are having, and it goes something like this. It ain't ignorance that causes all the trouble in this world. It's the things people know that ain't so. Now, the opponents of the millage request seem to know a lot of things that ain't so. For example, the opponents say your taxes will increase 29% if the millage is passed. Ain't so. The truth is, your taxes will not increase. Due to plummeting property values, your taxes will decrease. They will be less in 2010 than they were in 2009, even with a millage increase. The check you write this year to pay your taxes in 2010 will be less than the one you wrote last year in 2009. The opponents say that the City of Troy has been mismanaged. Ain't so. Truth is, we have among the lowest tax rates, and yet we have the highest level of service. We have an award-winning library. We have a top-rated police force and fire department that keep us as one of the safest places to live, not just in Michigan, but in the entire United States. We have some of the best maintained roads and infrastructures in the area. CNN Money ranks us as the 22nd best place to live in the entire country. The opponents say that taking unpaid furlough days is not a pay cut. Ain't so. Truth is, when employees of Troy get their paychecks, they will be smaller than if they had not taken unpaid furlough days. For example, if you got paid $100 a day, you work 5 days, you get paid $500. If you work 4 days with one unpaid furlough day, you get paid $400. How is that not a pay cut? the City of Troy is paying them less money. The opponents say that the City of Troy has done nothing to cut costs. Ain't so. Truth is, the City of Troy has reduced the workforce by 63 full-time employees. This equates to a 13% reduction of the full-time workforce. They have made changes to employee health insurance, changes to employee pension plans, changes to employee benefits, all of which have substantially reduced costs. All of the city's 6 unions have expressed a willingness to negotiate wage and benefit concessions. The opponents say that the City of Troy is just using scare tactics to gain support for the millage proposal. Ain't so. The truth is, if the millage proposal fails, there will be dramatic cuts in personnel and services across the board, including cuts to the police and fire departments. The library will close, the nature center will close, the community center will close, the museum will close. The quality of life that we've all come to expect and enjoy by living in Troy will be dramatically reduced. Our property values will be reduced even further than they already have. Let's make sure we are not making our decision based on what ain't so. Let's make it based on the truth. If you want the truth, go to the City of Troy website at www.troymith.gov. Vote yes. Thank you.
The next speaker is Kathy Busaneri.
Good evening, everyone. As many of you know, and I'm supporting it tonight, my husband and I attended the Citizens Academy last fall. There were 16 people in our class who had never met before. The demographics ranged from 20-something singles to retired couples. Experience and backgrounds were as diverse as you would expect in Troy. Each week we spent an evening with a different group of city personnel. The police department, the fire department, Parks and Rec, the library and museum, public works, finance, planning, engineering, traffic engineering, economic development, the city attorney, and building inspection. Classes would start at 5:30. Presentations would be given, and then the questions would start in depth. One night we worked until after 11 p.m. This was no quick glance at the operation. Each participant came away with a comprehensive understanding of the city's management. I know that everyone in the group came away with respect for the creativity, the innovation, and the efficiency our city employees have produced. The list of accolades earned by our city staff is lengthy. If you'd like to read it, you can check the financial summary for the year ended 2009. You've heard of many other accolades already this evening. Something else was evident. The people who are running our city take pride in the jobs they do in the city they serve. They're our friends and our neighbors. They share the values we cherish here in Troy, and I want to say to each of them, thank you for everything you do. I would like to suggest that all our citizens take advantage of the opportunity to talk to the city staff. Get the facts. Over the next 3 weeks, there will be a number of forums for the community to listen, ask questions, and learn the facts. You can find out where and when these forums are by going to the city website or by calling Community Affairs. It's also been in the Troy Somerset Gazette and the Troy Times. Don't rely on neighborhood gossip designed to confuse and intimidate. This election is too important. Please find out the facts for yourself and vote yes on the millage. Thank you.
Bill Briggs.
My name is Bill Briggs. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Members, I spoke to this body last year on the issue of a towing contract. And after you listened to the companies who bid on the contract, city staff reports, and concerned citizens, you made a decision in the best interest of the citizens. I am here tonight in support of the city's proposed 1.9 millage increase. As a homeowner in Troy, I believe there are certain essential services that enhance a community and make it a desirable place in which to live and work. Having said that, I want to be clear that the current trend by elected officials from Lansing to Troy of holding citizens hostage by threatening to make wholesale cuts to services unless taxes are increased is unacceptable. A 1.9 millage increase will not alone solve the city's financial problems for the future. It may not even sustain us for more than a few years. Therefore, it is the fiduciary responsibility of this elected body to represent the interests of the citizens of Troy and make difficult budgetary decisions while maintaining essential services. One of a community's essential service is public safety. Any cuts to this service must be done not with an axe, but with the precision of a surgeon. A safe community is the result of a well-managed police department working with its citizens to prevent crime. The fear of crime, either real or imagined, can cripple a city as much or more than a poor economy. Instead of cutting library services and the community center, perhaps the city should re-examine its needs to invest in project or recreational programs. By their very appearance, speak of unwise spending. Such items are not worth the laying off of a single employee. Passage of this millage does not equate to an endorsement from the citizens for this council to continue with business and spending as usual, but rather is an opportunity to restructure the city's priorities. We are all too familiar with the reality of our current economy. When this millage passes, I encourage you to use these extra funds to make common sense decisions and create a sustainable plan for our city. Thank you.
The next speaker is Swarm.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Swan Rajpal. I wish to speak in favor of the proposed millage increase for the property owners of Troy. I am a resident of Troy for the last 35 years, and I've moved from one house to another house 3 times, but have stayed in Troy. And the reason being because I love the city, the services the department provides, the atmosphere in which my children have grown up, and the schools they attended. In fact, in the late 80s, my wife worked very hard to pass the millage increase for the Troy High, and we were fortunate that our kids went into Troy High, and it's one of the best schools in the country. It lives in the state. The children, while they were at the school, utilized the library, the parks, and other amenities, and the police and the fire department provided the safety. And what I'd like to say that the millage increase is being proposed for 5 years, and let us not be short-sighted by crimping on contribution to our Commonwealth during the hard economic times. Let us keep this city as the city of the future, the city of tomorrow. I strongly suggest we vote yes on the millage increase. Thank you.
Before the next speaker, I'm going to call the next, the next 5 people. Lee Gillette, Victor Lenabov, Mary Ann Bernardi, James Savage, and John Witt. Those people would come up in that order, please. Thank you. Yes.
Good evening. My name is Ward Randall, and I have lived in Troy for the past 5 years. A week ago here, I gave examples of how Troy has provided me with the finest city services of any place I have ever lived at the lowest tax cost. That is why I will be voting for the 1.9 mils on February 23rd. By all the evidence, Troy is a very well-managed city. I trust our city manager and his administration to administer the tax revenues from our 1.9 mils efficiently and wisely with your council oversight. With this millage proposal, Troy is out front addressing the coming shortfall in city tax revenues, but we are not alone. Our neighbors to the west in Bloomfield Township already have a new 1.3 mils on their February 23rd ballot to preserve their police force. And our neighbor to the east, Sterling Heights, is considering its own 1.9 mils to avoid laying off 120 city employees, about 1/4 of its city workforce. Later this year, I predict we will see numerous new operating millage proposals or massive cuts in services or both in other neighboring communities as they wake up to how far and how fast their revenues from their property taxes are falling. Troy currently has the lowest operating and total millage of Oakland County's 25 cities. Even after our new 1.9 mils, Troy's millage will still be among the 4 lowest, and that's before the rest of Oakland County's communities realize they will need to raise their millages. If Troy's 1.9 mils were standing alone, that would cost the average Troy homeowner 54 cents a day this year. But that 54 cents will be way more then offset by the drop in our total property tax bills for the rest of our Troy City taxes, our school taxes, and so forth. So there won't be any 29% tax hike for anyone. In fact, almost all Troy property owners will experience a significant tax reduction from last year, even with the new 1.9 mils. My kind of Troy will need its new 1.9 mils from me for the next 5 years. Thank you.
And the next speaker is Lee Gillette.
Good evening. I am Lee Gillette. On January 12, 2010, the Troy Leadership Coalition conducted a public forum for the purpose of providing information to the citizens of Troy so that they could make an informed decision on the upcoming special election for a millage increase. Following this forum, representatives of the Troy Leadership Coalition met and reached a unanimous decision to support passage of the 1.9 mil increase for a maximum duration of 5 years. We did not make this decision lightly. We looked at the value of the services provided by the city for our tax dollars, the potential loss of services if a millage increase is not passed. We considered the proactive measures that the city has and is continuing to implement to avoid a budget shortfall. Based on all of the facts and the information presented, we believe that this increase is the best course to address the budget shortfall while allowing the city to continue to seek long-term measures towards a balanced budget with minimal or no reduction in essential city services. The city has been proactive in projecting revenues and expenses and in seeking creative means to balance the budget. Many other cities have not done this, and as we've heard, will eventually have to deal with their own budget shortfall. While our decision to support the 1.9 mil increase, we urge the City Council to adhere to certain stipulations. That the 1.9 mil increase is a maximum amount and only is levied to balance the budget. As other revenues increase, the millage increase be reduced accordingly. The city management continue to be proactive in seeking other means to balance the budget so that the millage increase can be reduced or eliminated. That the city engages transformational leadership to develop a vision of positive change in Troy and institute a plan to invoke that positive change. And that the positive changes invoked by the city will in fact be of value to every citizen in Troy. We support a yes vote on your ballot for the Tuesday, February 23rd special election. Signed by the folks from the Troy Leadership Coalition that were present that night. Henry Philo representing the Troy Democratic Club, James Campbell representing the Troy Area Republican Club, and Michael Schwartz representing the Troy Chamber of Commerce. Keep safe, Troy safe. Vote yes.
Victor Laneboff is our next speaker.
Good evening. I believe I provided you with a table. I don't know if it was passed around to you. It has a page with 5 tables on it. As you know, I like the facts, and what city management has presented is not a true picture of what is happening. In their September 9th memo, they're providing you with a scenario about with the projected revenue decreases and how the expenditures. And they came up with a 22.6 deficit of the amount of proposed cuts that they would have to make in order to what you call balance the budget. On page 2, they're using an assumption of a 2% increase in the general fund cost on an annual basis. The first table is their information minus the fund balance, the 2 rows of fund balance information, and I added a row showing you the annual increase in expenditures. 2% of $62 million is not $2.3 million. 2% of $58.1 million is not $2.2 million. What management is using is not the 2% that they stated that they would use, but they're using actually 3.75%, nearly double the amount. The impact that this has is that by increasing the annual expenditures more than what will be, there's a greater amount of projected cuts that would have to occur. Table 2 uses a true 2% annual increase, and you will notice that now the deficit has dropped, or the projected cuts have dropped from 22.6 to 17.7. Not included in this table is information that John Zerlag has already provided, that 90 positions will be eliminated next year. Now, I don't know if these positions will be outright eliminated or if they're just going to be as a result of the privatization and the regionalization. That was a quote that he was given in a newspaper article in the Oakland Press on January 28th. And it's also, Mark Miller had met, when I saw him at the League of Women's things, had mentioned, yeah, 90 was the number that he had heard. I'd asked, what is approximate average pay? Because I wanted to get an idea. Well, the average pay and benefits is about $100,000 per employee, give or take, some are less, some are more. If you take 90 people at $100,000, that's a $9 million cut. If you use the 40% that has been used, that will come up to a $3.6 million reduction in the expenditures. Table 3 shows you that $3.6 million reduction. Table 4 shows you the $9 million reduction. Now you'll see that it's dropped from either 14.1 in projected cuts or only 4.8 million in projected cuts. We have also heard about concessions. If we're going to get true concessions from employees, not furloughs, but actually true concessions in either in cuts in pay or in benefits, the amount that I heard was $2 million that they were seeking. Well, if they got that a true real cut, Table 5 shows you what happens if you include that $2 million cut in the year 2010 and 11, and that they're real cuts, not just furlough days. Now you will notice that at the end of 5 years, there's a surplus of 0.3. Even using the declining revenues that management has provided, they have not given you a true picture of the need for the increase. They have not factored in the fact that there are going to be positions eliminated, which they have constantly said were going to happen, and they've also talked about employee concessions. If you put it all together, we don't need that 1.9 mil increase.
Marianne Bernardi is our next speaker.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Listening to Mr. Lenilov, I have to say that I truly believe that. I believe that. I can't come up here and spout figures at you the way he can, but I really do not believe that you can forecast 5 years from now what the need will be. Our state capital, they can't even do that for 1 or 2 years, but no, we can do it for 5. I don't know what globe we're looking into, but you know, it must be wonderful to be able to see into the future 5 years out. I wish I could do it. Well, anyways, that's not what I came here to say. I wanted to tell you that my concern is really about what Troy is doing with the money. Okay, first of all, the transit center. I know the new news is that we got the $8 million federal money in here by, you know, buying that with the lobbyists that we've been paying for. And of course, you know, don't forget we have to pay state and federal taxes as well. But at any rate, I wanted to share with you I have a feeling that probably most of you have not watched as many planning commissioner meetings that I have. I've listened to almost all of them about the transit center. And I don't know, are you really aware the devil is in the details? Our own planning commissioners had several concerns about that transit center. One, by the time that they were brought to the table, almost all the decisions were already made and already decided, so they felt that, you know, they really didn't have the input that Birmingham did. The roof is the most expensive they've ever seen in their life. One of the commissioners said that it's a green roof, but it's the most expensive roof that he's ever seen in his entire career. Third, there are no elevators, so the handicapped and those with strollers and babies and everything are going to really be strapped. They'll have a long list of ramps to go on. And they're very concerned about that, but they didn't have any input. Now, my concern, too, has to do with the cost. Troy had to pay $1.5 million. Birmingham paid $300,000. I have not heard one person, not one person in this city or on this council question why Birmingham got away with $300,000 for that, and we had to pay $1.5 million. I don't like it. All right, and now another thing that concerns me, city manager's package, $220,000. That's his compensation package. Now, what does he do when he comes into office? Turns around and hires a consultant by the name of Dick Carlisle And he is the one who's going to all the different departments and analyzing and negotiating. I wish I could cut a deal like that. Hey, could you pay me that level of salary and let me hire somebody to do my job? Thank you.
Before Mr. Savage starts, I'll call the next 5 people. John Witt, Charlene Feminino, Christine Hill, Steve Toth, Bill Cowger. Yes, Mr. Savage?
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. Well, I thought I was the only one interested in the transit centre. And so I'm really not going to talk about the election because I have not taken a position. Because in the last years that I've witnessed Troy business, it always seems to me that our voters end up voting the right way. So, and we're going to accept what they vote anyhow. And yeah, they do. They are very smart. So whichever way they vote, it will turn out to be the right way. And you know, as examples, you know, they voted the right way on the Delphi, the Convention Center, the Long Lake Interchange, and all these things. The voters have a sense of what is right for Troy. So I don't think they need me to tell them how to vote. Okay, the issue really is, again, the transit center. And the reason I have to keep coming back is because I could speak all night on it, and I only get 3 minutes. And I heard at the last meeting, there was a comment that there is too much misinformation and not enough facts regarding the transit center. And I agree with that. At the last meeting, Mr. Miller commented on the transit center, but all he talked about was money. Last year, a spokesman for the project spoke at length right here in favor of the transit center, but all he only talked about was money. He was one of the lobbyists, I believe, that we pay $4,000 a month to bribe politicians for our tax dollars. At one point, he talked about possibly squeezing up to $150 million out of our bankrupt government, and you can check the records. During the last few weeks, I have presented Council with pages of facts why the city should not be involved in this project. So far, the people in favour of the project have only presented us with artists' impressions, vague projections, and how much it might cost the federal government. Well, I think the American people are angry at all the levels of government for handing out billions of dollars with no oversight, whether it be to Wall Street bankers, a bridge to nowhere in Alaska, or a transit center with no passengers. If my comments on this subject are questionable to any member of the Council, I would be very happy to sit down with them for a frank discussion, because all you're getting is the administration's view.
Okay, thank you.
We could even spend a day looking at the area transit system. Thank you.
Mr. Savage. John Witt, and then the next speaker after John is Charlene Feminino. I believe she came back in. Yes. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just want to say 2 things. First of all, I don't know if it's been brought up before, but I want to comment on the use of city funds and city resources to distribute material about this tax increase election. As you probably all of you know, the city has now began at city facilities distributing a yellow sheet of paper which has information about what a yes vote means and what a no vote means, which I think is clearly misleading and biased, but the same thing that the brochure that was mailed to the residents. Now that's being pushed on residents at city facilities, and as far as I know, the council did not approve that. It was never run by the council. The council did not approve the cost of producing or distributing that brochure. They did not approve of disseminating that brochure, and I think that's a very bad precedent to set. I think that's a very inappropriate action by the administration to do that. I think that's a serious policy decision that needs to be made by this council, what information is going to be given to the residents, where it's going to be distributed, how it's going to be distributed. Now, on this yellow piece of paper, there's also a new message from the city manager who uses what I think is campaign language, talking about whether this is a 29% tax increase or not. Well, let's just go back to the issue of the 29% tax increase again. Now, for years, the assessor on his website and in all his reports, and Mr. Lamerato in all his budget presentations has always talked about millage rates. They've bragged about how Troy's had one of the lowest millage rates in the area. It's always been millage rates, millage rates, millage rates. All of a sudden, the millage rate isn't important, because we don't want to talk about the millage rate because this is a 29% increase in the general operating millage rate. We can't have it both ways. We've talked for years about millage rates, and now the millage rate's not important. It's the amount of tax change because of property values going down or up that is important. This is clearly a 29% tax increase, and let me tell you why using 29% is the best figure. For every single resident, every single taxpayer in this city, they will pay 29% more in taxes than they would otherwise pay if the tax increase failed. For every single year this tax increase is in place. It doesn't matter what your taxable value is, doesn't matter what your assessed value is. You will pay 29% more in taxes. That's a 29% tax increase across the board. We don't have to play with games with showing pictures of houses, if your assessed value is this, if your taxable value is this. Every single household, every single tax business in the city will pay a 29% tax increase. So let's call this what it is. It's a 29% tax increase, and I think that's way too much. It's out of line. As been mentioned again, we are the only community in Metro Detroit seeking such a huge increase in city taxes. I really think that the residents are going to examine this and say, the city needs to get their own house in order before they come in looking to us for 29% more in money. Thank you.
Next speaker is Charlene Feminino.
Hello, good evening, members of the council. We're getting to be almost old friends here. The first thing I'd like to bring up is when I was looking at the CAFR, which is the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, this is maybe a small thing to you, but I noticed that you use the word expenses. Now, Ms. McGinnis, you're ostensibly a CPA, correct?
No.
Oh. Well, Mr. Howerlack, when you had your class in governmental accounting, did they ever tell you to call a government expenditure an expense?
You need to address the chair. That's our rule.
Sorry.
They'll still hear all of you.
Okay, sorry. Anyway, this is inappropriate according to, if you have ever had a class in governmental accounting, you never refer to governmental expenditures as an expense. Only businesses use the word expense. Also, as I was reviewing things, I noticed that I guess we have a $1.6 million shortage that you have to make up for next year. And in looking over this CAFR statement for last year, on page 12, I see we spent $28 million on public safety. And then if we go down, we see that on recreation and culture, we spent $10.2 million on recreation and culture. I have a FOIA in to find out exactly what that means. That's an awful lot of money to be spending on something and trying to reduce police and fire services. And, so I think we need to know what the heck's going on there. Then we find the Sanctuary Golf Course lost $711,000. The Aquatic Center lost $111,000. And the museum, the budget appears, from what I could see, was a loss of $444,000. In fact, from 1998 to 2008, there has been a 220% increase in the amount spent on the museum. And, that far exceeds inflation. How can you justify this kind of spending? I mean, it's just impossible. And how is it that Sheriff Bouchard, who had a $12 million deficit, could balance his budget and only lay off 3% of his employees? I mean, to me, there's something wrong here. And I think we ought to have transparency. We ought to open up the books to the citizens. I'd like to take a closer look at the detailed entries for these different accounts to see where this money is going. Also, you have to realize also that, like one other person pointed out, this just isn't at the city level. This is at the state and the federal level. This administration has incurred $12 trillion deficit. Senator Lieberman said in 10 years it's going to be $21 trillion. Well, that's the short-term debt. The long-term debt is $50 trillion. George Celente, C-E-L-E-N-T-E, for anyone who wants to Google it, was a futurist, has said by 2012 this country will be like a third world nation because we're going to go bankrupt. We cannot pay off this debt. And we should not be spending money at the city, at the state, or at the federal level. This is total irresponsibility.
The next speaker is Christine Hill.
Madam Mayor, Council, I moved here in 1990. I love this town. Regarding our upcoming millage vote, there appears to be a misleading soundbite making its way around town about a 29% tax increase. Because the February 23rd vote is crucial and will have a profound effect on the future of Troy, and because that percentage sounded way out of line to me, I did some research to check things out. I discovered that the 1.9 mil increase applies only to the city's operating budget. Also, with property values continuing to go down, our city assessor indicates that the average homeowner in Troy will see a decrease in their total taxes paid in 2010 as compared to 2009, even with the 1.9 rolled in. Take a look at the examples on the website. Property values are dropping all over town, as will our 2010 property tax bills, which is precisely the reason the city is facing such dire financial straits. As an example, in my subdivision in Section 11, very few homes were sold in 2009, but of those, 3 of them sold for the same price my husband and I paid for our comparable home 20 years ago. Discouraging, yes, but this will result in a hefty decrease in our taxable value and a significant decrease in our 2010 tax bill. Check it out when you receive your new assessment later this month. I also discovered that city staff has been reduced by over 60 positions in the last few years, and many other budget-cutting measures have been implemented in various city departments. Furlough days have been implemented, and the city is looking closely at its medical coverages. About 60% of our city employees are also Troy homeowners. All of this means that we, the homeowners, corporate property owners, employees, city council, and city administration are in this crisis together and must do all we can to ensure a viable future. Our city offers and delivers the excellent amenities and services we depend on and we value. Our wonderful and bustling community center and library will close without a yes vote. The same is true for our beautiful museum and nature center. Also, if the millage vote fails, we will lose some of our excellent and highly trained police officers and firefighters. Something for citizens to consider is that if a city's safety rating goes down, homeowners' insurance premiums go up. We have a very important decision to make on February 23rd. I encourage everyone to take a look at the information on the city's website. Attend one of the scheduled community meetings or make a phone call to City Hall. Get your questions answered. Don't fall for misleading rhetoric. Do some digging and get the truth. Let's make the right decision with a yes vote that will allow Troy to remain the safe city it is, able to continue to provide what we've come to expect and appreciate. We know that cities all around us are also dealing with financial crises. Let's make sure that the place where home buyers and business owners continue to want to locate and invest is Troy. Thank you.
Steve Toth is our next speaker.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council, and staff. My name is Steve Toth. I'm a 19-year resident for this city, a taxpayer. I just want to begin my story that 19, 20 years ago, I came to Michigan to take a job in Birmingham. And coming from a rural community in Ohio, it was great to have a job in Birmingham, but it was also a shock to see what it would cost to live in that community. And as I looked at surrounding communities, I found an opportunity to look at Troy and realize affordable housing, low taxes, a lot of services. Something I wanted for my children as they were growing up, because at that point they were in elementary school age. During that time of 19 years, I did work in Birmingham and other communities, but ultimately fell and worked here in Troy. And I got to know this community very well. I got to know it very well by being in the Citizens Academy. I got to know this community well by being a volunteer. My wife and I volunteering many hours every year. We got to know the folks in this community. But one of the things that sometimes we don't say is thank you enough. We don't look at things with a half full glass of water, because when we talk about a 6.9 mil, a lot of good things must have been happening for us to have the lowest millage rate in this county. and probably the lowest in the state. We should be very proud of that. And we should look at that as a blessing that we just can't just play games with. If we're in a community whose millage rate is twice as much, and we want to raise it by 1.9 mils, it's not a 29% raise, it's a 15% raise. But no, we did such a good job when times are good and what we provided. We did very good in providing great services, we paid our employees well, and we maintained very high standards. And through the council that we elect, you guys are the ones who watch the staff in making the best budgets, make sure we got the best services. So this 6.9 mil and that 1.9 increase is a game I'm tired of. This game is played in a way that I think hurts this community and it misleads people. Living here in 19 years, I found out that my taxable is still climbing up until last year and possibly even this year. I find that my taxes aren't going to go down compared to those who have lived in this community for 4 or 5 years, who've not been here as much, but they're already seeing some tax advantages. I find that even though I may not see as big a cut because I'm starting to hit that threshold, I still care to pay what's necessary to continue those services. So what I figure is that with the overall taxes I pay through my county, I'm saving $6 a week. But because of that millage increase, it's only going to cost me $1 a week more to maintain most of the quality services. And I think we should consider that in our thoughts. Thank you.
Before Bill Calver speaks, I'm going to call the rest of the speakers. Ed Spillers and Dale Smith. Mr. Calver?
Thank you. I do have to make one comment, and it's kind of off topic for what I had planned to say. The Bostics have been solid citizens and pillars of this community for generations. And to, number one, make up things about them the first time around, and then the second time to imply that there's something less than the highest integrity is really is low. It's typical of those who would shoot the messenger. The previous city council hired John Zerlek 9 months ago. They set his salary. They set his remuneration. They're the ones that insisted that he continue to take his retirement. If you have a problem, talk to the previous city council. Don't blame the messenger. Within 3 days, he figured out there's a problem. Within 5 months, he presented it to the city, and here we are less than a year later deciding our future of our city because he recognized and has a decent opportunity to forecast. People are saying the city didn't forecast well. We're so far ahead of the game, it's unbelievable. Anyway, I've seen the numbers from the Oakland County Executive's Office. It's not scare tactics. The taxes really are going to go down. I mean, your tax bill is going to go down no matter what. It's going to be 12% this year. If it doesn't pass, it's 12% this year. It's 10% the next year. It's 8% the next year. It's 5% the next year, and it's 4% the next. You're going to get a 31%, tax decrease over the next 5 years. In 2014, you're going to be paying 31% less than you paid in 2009. That is not unreasonable. They're going to have to reinvent the way they do business to take that kind of tax hit. That's one of the things that the chamber insisted on, is they look at reinventing what the status quo isn't going to work. With the 1.9 mil increase, yeah, you might have a little bit of an increase the first year. The next year you're going to have you'll have a 7.5% cut. The next year it'll be a 15% cut. The next year it'll be 19% less, and the next year it'll be 22% less than you paid in 2009. That's not a lot to ask. Every year they're going to have to pay with cuts and cuts and cuts and figure out, and they're committing to deliver the same services that we have today with that reduced income and that reduced revenue. And it's actually worse for the commercial side, like Mr. Bostic. He walked in and he's committed this year, and he's not going to get advantage of those because he's locked into this current tax rate. The city got a heck of a deal out of that. I mean, he's being a real patriot to take that. So it really made me angry, and I can't urge you enough to look at the truth of this thing, to make sure that if you value your police, I'm telling you, you're going to lose 30% of your police. you're putting yourself and your neighborhood and or your business at risk. Vote yes. Thank you.
Ed Spillers is our next speaker.
Good evening, Council. I didn't come up here to talk about the transit center because, I mean, we all know what the investment of the transit center is going to do for this city. For every dollar that's invested, $8 is returned into private business investment. So what the city saw when they gave up $1.5 million against what Birmingham did, they saw a possible $12 million reinvestment into the community. And you just don't walk away from something like that. But I'm really here to say that I'm encouraged by what I've seen in the streets, what I've seen in the eyes of the people in the city of Troy, and the feeling in the community. People have, despite the propaganda and rhetoric of certain faction of individuals, people want no change in their service. They want to keep the most livable and safest city intact, and they're not afraid to pay for it. Look what's happened. Uncertainty in the market and volatility in the state and concern in the community. Rightfully so. It's troubled times. A faction of influences, instead of uniting our community, desire to demonize government and even criticize business owners who stand by this city, who bring jobs and revenue into this city, just because they want to save our city. So what do you want to do? Choice is yours. Do you want the 3.4% increase in your taxes or 67 police officers off the beat? Can you spare $38 against an average $430 savings in your property taxes? Or do you want to leave our children without a library to hang out at? If you like the positives, then grab your neighbor, shake an officer's hand, go door to door, call a buddy, write an op-ed, and spread the word. Vote yes on February 23rd.
Is Mr. Smith here? Dale Smith, I see a name on here, but I don't see a person. Okay. Mrs. Ann Comiskey? Did I miss your name? Oh. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Last council meeting, I spoke to you about the road less traveled by Robert Frost, and I just wanted to finish my thoughts tonight and actually add an additional thought. I've been hearing a lot of F's lately, 4 F's in terms of this millage. First F is fuzzy math. The second F is faulty logic. The third F is fear tactics. So I want to talk to you tonight about facts. I bought my husband a saw for his birthday 2 years ago. His birthday is April 15th, tax day. I spent $350 on this saw because he likes to do home repairs, and he's pretty good at it, not being a carpenter. He was working in the garage one day last summer and cutting miter cuts. I'm not a person who does a lot of home repairs, you know. But he went into the house to put up this piece of molding, and pretty soon there was a knock on the door, and our mailman came to the door and said, "Did you just loan your saw to somebody?" And he said, "No, why?" The mailman said, "Well, somebody just picked it up from your garage, took it out in his car, and drove away." The mailman luckily got the number of the license plate. He got the make of the car, and so my husband called the police department and said, "I don't know if this is an emergency or not. I can just call the regular number if you want me to, but somebody just stole my saw." And the dispatch officer took the information, and within 2 hours, the Troy Police Department had caught the man who had stolen the saw, who was also driving in a stolen car and had stolen other property from other homeowners. So for me, this is a very personal issue. I know that if there are 40 fewer police officers on the road, we would not have that saw today, and I would be out $350 unless I wanted to claim it on my home insurance, which is a $250 deductible, so I'd still be out money. So I say to you that in spite of the 4 F's, the fuzzy math, the faulty logic, the fear tactics, and the facts, my vote on February 23rd is going to be very personal, because I would much rather spend $38 in increased taxes than have to spend $358 and worry about my personal property. So that's the end of my saga, and I hope that other people choose, as I do, to take the unlikely position of asking you or giving you more money when these are tough economic times. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That concludes those that signed up. Does council wish to take a break before we have responses or questions? Okay, thank you. 5 minutes? Okay, 5-minute break. We'll return. We ran over, sorry. Okay, council's back in session. If I can get my colleagues. And because we only took 5 and then it ended up being 7. Audience, we're going to begin. Some council members asked for some clarification or had questions or something, so who wants to begin? Councilman Slater?
I would ask if the city manager would like to respond to this handout that we received. If you've had time to look at it, if you could respond to it.
Madam Mayor, members of council, Mr. Slater, I'll be happy to respond in any fashion. I had taken notes from essentially every speaker, and I can do one of two things. I can respond to the city council's specific requests based on comments that were made. I will do it either through myself, Mr. Lamorato, Mr. Miller, Mr. Licari, our city assessor, or Ms. Sears, our HR director. So it's your choice. I can respond to any questions you may have, or I can run through the comments that were made and prepare a response. Your choice.
I think probably we should take it from council questions because there might be specific things they want first. So I guess he was asking about this chart we were given.
I'd like Mr. Lamorato to respond to the chart advanced by Mr. Lenenbaum.
Mayor and City Council, I unfortunately didn't have the chart while he was looking through all these numbers and so forth, but I do recall them, and there's no explanation on all the various 5 tables. But I do recall the first one was there was questioning the 2% increase, I believe it was, per year, and that did not add up. Well, I just happen to be carrying with me to various meetings all our presentations that we had for City Council, and the PowerPoint the very first night explained our expenditure assumptions, which included 10% per year increase, an additional $1 million per year increase for pension and retirement health care funding requirements over the next 5 years. That is why it is not 2%. It also includes the $1 million. The other charts, I'm not sure what these are. I haven't had a chance to evaluate them, and I don't know what they are because other than listening to what he, in a couple of minutes there, what he went through, I'm not sure what they are. The only other one I can mention too is about the, I think maybe Mr. Lenenbaum should view our website, which does have an explanation of several of the charts if he hasn't already, which does explain a couple of the ones about the putbacks and the savings and so forth and how that works, where this $45 million is at $45 million, and how that works out and what the actual putbacks. There's a very nice chart on there that explains all that. The other charts, I'm not sure what they are.
Okay. Further questions on specific things? Councilwoman McGinnis, you have one?
Yes, actually I'll start with just one question. There was reference in council comments to a yellow sheet of paper that is apparently in support of the millage increase, and it was indicated on the record that it was printed by the city administration without our approval, and I just wanted to have someone double check my recollection. I don't believe that this was approved by us, but I also don't believe that this was printed by us. Can you give me some information on that, sir?
Absolutely. I'd like to have Captain Colleen Mott approach the microphone, as well as Officer Joe Morgan. Colleen is a member of the Troy Command Officers Association, and Mr. Morgan is a member of the Troy Police Officers Association. They can certainly address the issue that was brought up relative to a brochure, how it was funded.
I believe what the gentleman was referring to was a yellow fact sheet, which was prepared by me as a member of the Troy Police Command Officers Association. I did research, and as a Troy resident, I did research on the, excuse me, the tax increase issue, and I consulted with all available information that was available to me on the city website, and as a result, I prepared a document that was included in a package that members of the Troy Police Officers Association and members of the Troy Command Officers Association presented in a door-to-door citizen-to-citizen effort to educate the citizens on the facts of the proposed millage increase. And that was paid for with union funds. It was copied and researched on our own personal time. Does that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely does.
I'm sorry. In addition, Officer Morgan here has the receipts indicating that these items were purchased using union funds.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And in addition to that, I understand that in some other communities that have villages on the ballot that there are city employees going door to door, passing out information. I think Bloomfield Township.
That's correct.
Yes. And if it is a city of Troy flyer or information or brochure, it's always designated that it's City of Troy and has the city logo, and it's very clear, like the brochure that was sent out, that council approved. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councilman Howard.
I just wanted to ask my question because it's specifically related to what's the conversation at hand, and I'm curious as to the policy that we're following here as far as things are concerned. Is the policy that any group can pass anything out through, I guess let me back up, because I only heard about this over the weekend, and nobody hands me anything, I guess. They know who I am, but and assume that members of council already know what's going on. But who's passing it out at city facilities, I guess, is the question that was brought to me, and perhaps that could be answered as well.
Are you referring to the brochure that was published by the Troy Command Officers Association and the Troy Police Officers Association?
Well, I had a query from a resident who inquired, wanting to know why things were being handed out at the community center, for example. And it was mentioned a yellow piece of paper, I think. I'm curious as to what the policy is and whether or not we're handing those out by city personnel on city time. That is my concern, yes.
I can address the fact that city personnel, if they're getting paid, cannot hand out any material. That's not part of their job description. As far as citizens on their own time handing out information, I'd have to refer to the policy. I know that perhaps either our city attorney or our city clerk knows of our policy that we have toward handing out brochures at or near city buildings.
Yes, Mr. Blum?
Mayor, I will at least speak to the First Amendment rights. You know, again, the campaign finance rule says that you cannot use city funds in promotion or in opposition to a ballot question. As far as the right, I know that there was a question, I believe it was last meeting, about persons being in front of the library. And again, we do not regulate what happens. I mean, the content, we don't know whether it's pro or against, but every person does have the right to be in front of the library and to hand out information. There are some restrictions. You can't block access and things like that, but there is a right for persons to be on city property, again, not employees in support of or in opposition to, but there is a right to be outside, especially of the library, and hand out information.
And would it be safe to say that there are or are not things being handed out at the community center by personnel?
I don't know that answer, but if Mrs. Anderson is here tonight, she's not? Okay. I can certainly ask her if she knows what's going on in terms of people handing out information at the community center.
And I will certainly forward the possibility that people just sometimes get excited, you know, and might jump the gun before when they're actually off the clock. But if that's the case, I don't know, so I don't want to suppose either way. The other question I would have is, if we're allowing these non-city published materials to be distributed by leaving them in racks or whatever the case might be, is it also the policy that those who may oppose what is being said could also leave it side by side in the same location?
Again, I'm not sure what's being left, and in terms of our policy on pro or against, I'm going to defer to our attorney as well for that type of material that can be disseminated.
Mrs. Stone?
Mayor, we do have some racks. It does not, the content is not regulated, so everyone has equal opportunity. It's time, place, and manner, so everyone is treated equally. The right to have information in, for example, if it's in a city facility. If there's information that is in favor of it, there's also an opportunity for information that is against.
And I think that's important information for anybody who has any interest in the election to know that they can have that right. Actually, they do have that right.
Okay, Councilwoman McGinnis, did you have another question? You said you had more than one.
I just wanted some clarification. Again, I heard in council comment, or I'm sorry, in public comment that there was 2.5% wage increases up to and including this past year, and I just wanted some clarification. I've actually asked quite a few questions regarding this specific fact, and I've received information to the contrary, so I'd just like that to be clarified as well.
Thank you. Last year was our fiscal year that began July 1, 2009. In July 1, 2009, all of the classified and all of the exempt personnel took a pay freeze. In July 1, 2009, and that's about 135 people. In July 1, 2009, all of the ASME personnel took a pay freeze. Is that correct, Becky? Okay. Also, July 1, 2009, I believe the fire service staff officers took a pay freeze. And there may have been the Troy police officers, July 1, 2009 as well?
Come in.
Okay. And that about covers almost all of the employees. Now, in addition to that, there's been talk about having two of our employee groups negotiate with the community. That's just not true. But we do have the Troy Command Officers Association and the Troy Fire Service Staff Officers Association that had voluntarily opened up their labor contracts and provided an equivalent of a 2.5% cut in their pay, their take-home pay, it's real money, as well as the equivalent of a 5% cut beginning July 1, 2010, running through June 30, 2011. So if you add the two together, it's about a 7.5% reduction in their payroll. And that was contingent upon successful passage of the millage. And the reason that those two groups indicated that was because I asked to sit down with them to talk about a partnership between the community and the employees in terms of having concessions. The two groups that I mentioned, both command groups in the fire and service, in the fire and police departments, could have told me to get lost. They could have said, you know what, John, our contract expires on June 30th, 2011. We have Act 312 arbitration rights. Talk to me in a year and a half from now. That's why they had a condition on their voluntary wage decrease that spanned 2 fiscal years. The other employee groups, classified and exempt groups, I've already met with them. I met with them in this room on more than, on 2 occasions. There's over 125 people there. They had, I could have mandated changes. As manager, they have no representation. But they agreed to not have representation by a union very recently, both groups. And I told them that I would talk to them to get ideas on how to cut payroll costs. What they did essentially, beginning this January, was to take, again, about a 2.5% cut in pay. It'll be in the form of either furlough days, holidays that should be paid and are no longer paid, or a straight 4 hours per pay period reduction. I left it up to the individual department heads to administer. My primary concern was to get the dollars down in payroll costs, not necessarily indicate how it was going to be done. So those groups are going to do that regardless of if a millage increase passes or not. And in addition to that, we're going to try to reduce healthcare costs as well, because that's very expensive. So if I can get 2.5% on healthcare costs, that'll be, if you add up 2 fiscal years, maybe about a 10% reduction overall. If you look at other cities, I don't like making comparisons to other cities because I'm not sure how they want to manage themselves. But if you take a look around the area at what we're doing in terms of salary and wages, with no increase last year, with an actual reduction from last year, plus a reduction this coming year, coupled with our millage rate being lower than all of those other municipalities, you'll find that our employees made the most concessions, and yet we have the lowest millage rate as well. So I know it's a long answer, but you know, I also heard that there was a gentleman in the audience, and it made you sick to lay off employees. I laid off 8 employees this January, and it made me sick too. Regardless of whether the millage passes, I'll be laying off up to 90 full-time employees because we just can't do business the way we did in the past. I have to streamline government operations, and we're looking to either privatize, regionalize, consolidate, or eliminate many job duties and job functions in favor of the private sector performing that work. And again, that's regardless of if the millage passes. If the millage fails, it's up to the city council, but like me, they cannot print money, and if our projections are correct, we'll be laying off about 1/3 of the entire workforce.
Mayor?
Councilman Kerwin, you had a question. Did someone have a question over here? Councilman Kerwin, you had one?
Thank you. It's really in response to that. You just made reference, if I may, City Manager Zerlad, to the man who came tonight from Thunderbird and talked about the good times and then the recent hard times. And making less sales, he had to cut 30%. My question to you is, are we in fact providing less services? Have we dropped by 30%?
No, and when you compare the City of Troy government to the private sector, what you have to realize is that if we made fuel injectors or auto parts or pizzas, if our demand went down, we would calibrate our workforce accordingly to meet a reduced demand. In Troy, we have to calibrate our workforce based on a reduced revenue line, and our demand never goes down. In fact, when times are tough, demand for services increases. And in particular, our quality of life venues, the library, the museum, the community center, Parks and Rec, there's more demands for those areas as people's wallets get a little squeezed. They want to stay closer to home for recreational purposes. So in response to your question, we do not calibrate our workforce to meet a reduced demand. We calibrate our workforce to meet a reduced revenue line, even though demand is increasing. That's why we have to have a partnership of taking a look at reducing the way we perform our government functions, but also seeing if there's a way to increase revenue as well. Or else we cut services.
Cut services. A specific concern I have, and it was brought up by another of our residents, Ms. Kaminsky, tonight. Like many of our residents, it's not just council, many of our residents, we receive a daily crime report, which is available and can be sent to anyone who requests. And I have noticed an increase in incidents. Not unusual. However, again, we rely on our professional police force to be out there and ready to respond. So on a daily level, we can see those services that are needed, desired by our residents, and yet need the response that our police force provides. So that's a concern of mine. So even though our service need and level has increased. Our revenue has decreased. The man from Thunderbird mentioned some of the things that he had to deal with. You just spoke about the pain you felt in the layoffs you made. The manager previous to you also made layoffs. We've seen retirements through attrition to lessen our overall workforce. But additionally, he brought up a couple things. When he brought his employees in, he also had to look at medical. He looked at an overall less salary, and he also changed retirement. Tell me again about our retirement. How are we one of the first?
Yes, it used to be that we had all of our employees on what was called a defined benefit plan, which essentially is a formula that multiplies the years of service times the average final salary over a time frame like the highest 3 years. And that essentially was guaranteed for the life of the retirement. It's a very expensive retirement package, especially when investments do not match about an 8% return. If there isn't an 8% return or more, there's essentially no cost by the local government. It's just the combination of employee contributions and investment income thereof. We realized early on, back in the 90s, I think 95, started to eliminate that benefit for all new hires. So now we have what's called the 401k or something equivalent to that, where there's no longer a defined benefit plan. What there is a it's called the defined contribution plan. There's no tail on that system, and we're at the point now where roughly 70% of all current employees are in that defined contribution plan that we have. Additionally, we no longer offer retiree health care for new hires when they retire. So we've made inroads in reducing employee benefit costs.
So the suggestions that came, changing the way we do retirement, we've done that. Changing the way we do medical, we've done that. In terms of layoffs and changing the way we do business in general, we have done that, and we're going to address that going forward, no matter what happens. So I hope that's just one example of some ideas that came forward tonight. I want you to know that we are addressing them, have been, and it's ongoing. Thank you.
Mayor?
Councilman Howard?
Yes, just to follow up on that so that we have an idea of scope. What is the, and I'm going to, because I'm just trying to throw facts out here. I'm really not trying to make a point other than make sure facts are out there. So could you tell us, of all of the folks that are working for the city who are in the defined contribution plan, what the maximum contribution that the city makes for anybody who works for the city, and what the minimum is, so we have an idea of range?
I'd rather have either Peggy or John respond to that as they administer that plan.
Back in '97, the early years when we first instituted the defined contribution plan, communities were very anxious to get these in. Livonia was one of the first. We were one of the first. The contribution rates were higher. I think we had one group where the employer contributed 13. Most of them, the employer contributed 12. Over time, we have negotiated that down to where anyone hired within the last 7, 8, 9 years, the employer is contributing 10%. That is very consistent with what all of the comparables who also have defined contribution contribute.
And if I could just follow up, is there a required employee contribution, or does the city basically just put that in there regardless of what the employee does with his or her pay?
No, the employee is required to also contribute.
But is that, just so we are understanding here, is that the case for all of the individuals on the DC plans?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so there is definitely an employee contribution.
Yes.
And how much is that?
4%.
Mayor and City Council, it ranges from 3 to 4%.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the information. I think that helps. And Mayor, there was one other item I wanted to follow up on because
Councilman Howard, go ahead.
Thank you. That was the issue of pay wage increase or not for the classified and exempt. And you know, again, I think this is another situation of somebody referring to something and getting an answer back referring to something else. The current fiscal year is the 2009-2010 fiscal year. And I think Mr. Beck was referring to the previous fiscal year. And it's my understanding, and actually I remember this because there was a lot of back and forth on this body as the years were closing, that back in July of 2008, July or June 30th, I believe, the City Council passed a restoration resolution to restore the 2.5% pay wage increase. And please correct me if I'm wrong, or let me know if I'm correct.
Okay. So you're saying that in effective July 1, 2008, there was a 2.5% increase?
Yes.
That ran through June 30, 2009?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to have to refer again to either John or Peggy.
That is in July 2008 for 2008-2009 fiscal year. There was a 2.5% increase. For this current year, 2009-10, there was no increase.
Right. Okay. And I just wanted to kind of get to the bottom of the statement that was made. So that increase, again, just to reiterate, was for the 2008 to 2009 fiscal year that ended June 30th of 2009. The current fiscal year that began last July 1st, we're about 3/4 of the way through that. The folks in that group, their wage scales were held 0%. Thank you.
And then to continue on, this fiscal year, they have indicated to me that they will take the equivalent of a 5% reduction, which is really 2.5% for the balance of this fiscal year. Either 6 furlough days, 6 holidays that would normally be paid that aren't paid, or a reduction in their pay sheet, their payroll of 4 hours per pay period. That would be 2.5% from now through June 30th.
And this is the non-union employees, correct?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you.
I'm currently negotiating with other groups, but I'm not allowed to disclose the conditions thereof until I receive word of ratification.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Fleming, you had a question?
Yes, I was going to say this for council comments, but I think it's appropriate now since we're in this discussion, we're talking wages and so forth. The question I asked, a hypothetical question at the last meeting, it did not give the city manager much time to do the calculation. The question I asked hypothetically, not proposing it, how much would wages have to be cut to cover the deficit? And you responded and you estimated about 50%.
Right.
Well, I did a calculation. Maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way, so you need to correct me. And I know that you and I have had a discussion, Mr. Zerlag, so you might be better prepared to answer this tonight. But the way I calculated it, if we have a $37.7 million deficit over a 5-year period, and our payroll is $42 million per year, take that snapshot. An average, if you take the $37.7 million and divide it by 5 years, that's $7.54 million deficit average per year. I know years are different. Actually, the first year I think is a 1.59 million deficit. But if you average the 37.7 million deficit 5 years, it's 7.54. If you divide that, again taking a snapshot of the 42 million round number payroll that we have now, that's about an 18%. In order to accomplish that, and I'm not proposing, I'm just trying to put it in perspective, that if you take a snapshot of where we are today and the average wage, the average deficit we have over 5 years, you would have to freeze the wages. You would have to take an 18% reduction in frozen wages from today in order to eliminate all this deficit. And I'm assuming this would be laying no one off, not closing any facilities and so forth. But tell me where my logic is wrong. I'm not proposing, I'm trying to put it in perspective.
Sure, and I appreciate the opportunity. First, I want to apologize for not being able to respond myself. I delegated the assignment this morning and did not even get a chance to speak with the person that I gave it to. So we'll learn this together. But I spoke with Mrs. Sears this morning. as well as John, but John got tied up on other matters too. And the way I framed the question to Ms. Sears was that if we were to try to close our gap between revenues and expenditures by reducing payroll over the next 60 months, what would that payroll deduction have to be, or the reduction in payroll? And I've asked Peggy to respond to that.
Mrs. Sears?
And what I did was actually broke it down by employee group, so that wasn't presumed that all employees averaged the same pay rate. And the first year, 5%. The second year it would take 16%. The third year, 18%. Fourth year, 12%. That's just getting us to the end of 2003. Those are then cumulative, because when I take a 16% decrease in my pay 2010, 2011 I'm going to take another 18% in pay. So by the end of just those 4 years alone, there is a cumulative average of about 50% reduction.
Councilwoman Kerwin, you had a question? On this same? Okay.
Now, and that's just 3 years. That's not the 5 years going out. That's not the sustainability issue.
2009.
The majority of our funding really goes to safety. So about 54% goes into safety. Is it not true that we could literally get rid of everybody else in the city and still, with that safety component, the pieces that were talked about tonight, asked about by our citizens, our streets, our police, our fire, everyone else wiped out, and we would still have to let go of people in those services?
Yes, if instead of the pay decrease, we just looked at eliminating personnel, by the end of those 4 years alone, we'd be getting rid of 171 positions. Our bottom line, we'd be down to 248 employees.
And again, this is sustainability. It's not a short-term issue. It's a year after year going forward. Less revenue we can see.
Okay. Further questions?
Mayor?
Anyone? Councilman Howerline?
Honestly, the question about how to, possible pay cuts and all this sort of thing to balance the budget is, I'm not really terribly thrilled with the presentation of the question or the answer. I just think it's a messy question, and because I think it actually opens up more questions than it answers. And, I don't really want to get too much off onto that tangent, but just briefly, I wanted to clarify something that has been said here in the past, and how much of our actual cash outlay in operations, and I'm not talking, about streets, drains, and all that sort of thing, but actual operations of the city is personnel related. Because I know we've talked about, that, personnel is the area that we, because we do want to treat our people here right, but because of the nature of government, there's very little, because we're so personnel related. What was that percentage again?
It was roughly 70%, so on a $60 million budget, it'd be about $42 million.
And the reduction in revenues projected over your time frame, 5 years, was how much percentage-wise was it?
John said he has the charts.
What was that question again?
Well, over the 5-year projection, what was the estimated decrease in in tax revenue?
Tax revenue, just tax revenue itself was in excess of $10 million.
And percentage-wise, what did that come out to now?
Well, it's as a percentage of taxable value, we have that. It's 12% next year, 10% the following year, 5%, and 4%.
Right.
Roughly about 40% reduction in the tax revenue.
Yeah, and well, thank you. And then there's the issue of fees and all that. So I mean, it's very, it's one of those things that would take a lot of time. And I think, depending on the outcome of the election, we'll figure out what we're going to do. But I think it's a difficult question to really do, because, I mean, we're not, you know, if we don't raise taxes, we're not going to balance the budgets on labor cuts, you know, so.
Mayor?
Okay, yes, Councilman Slater?
You know, I was in favor of this when we first decided to do this format, but this is getting ridiculous. We wanted to get some questions asked when people came up here. We're muddying the waters here, making people more confused. I'm not in favor of this at all. I think we should move on.
Well, it was an opportunity for council members to ask for clarification on things that were brought up during public comments that we put in.
I agree with that, but it seems
Yeah.
to me we're wandering here,
Okay.
way off base, and I think we should get back on track here.
Are there any other questions that pertain to what the public comment was? Okay, seeing none, then we'll go to the regular business, appointments to boards and committees. We have a city council appointment to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Mayor Pro Tem Fleming.
We have two people to the Board of Zoning Appeals that were nominated at our last meeting. I'd like to bring those names forward to appoint Donald L. Edmonds and Philip Sanziga as Board of Zoning Appeals, with terms expiring 1/31/2011.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Fleming, seconded by Councilman Howard, that we appoint Donald L. Edmonds as the Planning Commission rep to the Board of Zoning Appeals and Philip Zanziga as the Planning Commission alternate rep to the Board of Zoning Appeals, terms expiring January 31st, 2011. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kerwin?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilman Beltramini?
Yes.
Motion passes. H2 is nominations for appointments to boards and committees. Board of Zoning, Board of Building Code Board of Appeals.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Fleming?
Yes, I have one nomination for Building Code Board of Appeals. That name is Michael Carolyn, for term expiring 1/1/2015. We do have the application in hand now, and hopefully the next meeting I'll have a second resident as well. But at this point, Michael Carolyn in nomination.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second on this name? No?
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Fleming, seconded by Councilman Howard, that we nominate Michael Carolyn to the Building Code Board of Appeals as a resident on that board. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Howard?
Yes.
Kerwin?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilman Beltramini?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
Motion passes. H3 is the request to reschedule the 2009 liquor violation hearings.
Madam Mayor?
Councilman Beltramini?
Resolved that the Troy City Council hereby reschedules 2009 liquor violation hearings from Wednesday, February 10th, and Wednesday, February 17th, to Monday, March 1st, and Monday, March 15th, 2010, regular City Council meetings.
Support.
Moved by Councilwoman Beltramini, seconded by Councilman Howard, to approve the resolution as printed. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Kerwin?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
And for those that wonder, because they are public hearings, they will occur at the beginning of the meeting, and then other items will follow. Okay. Consent agenda. Does anyone want to remove any items? Okay. Can we have a resolution then to approve?
Madam Mayor,
Councilwoman Kerwin.
resolve that all items as presented on the consent agenda are hereby approved as presented.
Support.
Moved by Councilwoman Kerwin, seconded by Councilwoman Beltramini, that we approve all the consent agenda items as printed with this vote. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes?
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kerwin?
Yes.
Motion passes. So for those of you that were here on one of those items, they passed, you're all set, okay? We had, and next we go to council referrals, council comments. Reports. There's no study item or closed session this time. So council stands in adjournment at 9:42. See you March 15th.